Come in, settle down. Hope you ate your fill. Had some little dessert, coffee. This is going to be the funnest congregational meeting we've ever had. What a great agenda we have tonight, a lot of joy. Let's all begin with song as we say the words, behold how good it is to sit together as a happy family here at Congregation B'nai B'rith. I want everybody to repeat after me. It goes like this. E-O. All right, this time do it in rhythm. Here we go, 1, 2. E-O. 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 Now you try that. Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Try that. Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. How good it is to be here all together. E-O. Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Yours. Hine Mato Umanayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Try it again. Hine Mato Umanayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Try it. Hine Mato Umanayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. How good it is to be here all together. E-O. 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 Try it. Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Try it. Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Together let's sing how good it is to be here all together. Sing that. How good it is to be here all together. A congregation that sings together votes together. All right. President Judy Coper.
Thank you so much, Teacher. I'd like to call our annual meeting to order and welcome you all. We're so happy to see so many people here. Obviously, dinner helps, right? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay. I'm happy to call our annual meeting to order and welcome you all. We're really happy to see so many of you and hope that you like this new format of dinner and visiting followed by this meeting. Our agenda tonight is ambitious. I think we could put it up on the screen. But a great deal of preparatory and committee work has been done so that we can be very efficient and then get to our special treats and celebrations. So I'd like to begin. We're going to start with the approval of the minutes. Is this?
Oh, it's up there. To the right.
So here's our agenda so that you know what we're going to be doing tonight. Now we're going to start, here we go, with our motion to approve the minutes of the June 5th, 2016 annual congregational meeting. So if I could have a motion to that effect? So moved. Second. Great. Are there any additions or corrections? I believe there was one correction that was brought to the attention of our recording secretary.
Yes, if I may, Madam President, the original slate of trustees that was submitted, that's item 6 on the minutes. The roles of education VP and program VP had incorrect names on them based on the original documentation that was sent out. It should reflect Mimi Dent as the Education VP and Diane Zipperstein as the Program VP, with the remaining accurate.
Thank you. So with those revisions, it's now time to vote to approve the minutes. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. We're going to move on next to our finance report and budget presentation by Steve Zola, our finance VP.
Thank you, Judy. Hello, everybody. Can you all hear me okay? Great. Move the mic up. Move the mic up. Was that a joke? Because okay. I'd like to actually spend a little bit of time going through the 2016-2017 financial results and then talk a little bit about the budget for next year and seek your approval for that budget. I do want to mention a few things about the committee, since perhaps many of you are not certain who might be on the Finance Committee. And so I'd like to call your attention to a few of these people. Melody Lee is the treasurer this year, served as treasurer, I believe, for the past at least 2 years. And then Elizabeth Gaines and Terry Grimes. Those three, frankly, do all of the heavy lifting associated with running this organization from a financial perspective. And as we talked about in the pre-meeting, I think the most important thing that you should all be thankful for is that you have people like that are looking after the finances of this organization, and in particular making sure that they're spent where they should be spent and where money can be conserved. It is, in fact, being conserved. You see the rest of the members of the Finance Committee, and I certainly thank all of them for all their hard work over the last couple of years. I'll talk a little bit about the Investment Committee in just a moment, but Mike Stein certainly deserves some thanks at the end of this for his hard work on the Investment Committee as well. So I'd like to first of all start by talking a little bit about where the funding comes from to run the organization, and most of you know where most of that comes from. It certainly comes from your membership commitments, but I have a chart here that tells you a little bit more as to where that comes from, and you'll see that the really important part of that is the annual commitments, is not only annual commitments, but the general fund donations that are critical to the operation. This is what makes up the heart and soul of everything that we're able to do here. You see on the next slide actually the dollars associated with that, and this is the 2016-17 budget numbers. I'll talk a little bit about how we performed relative to that budget in just a moment. But that's really where the money comes from, or was planned to come from for 2016-17. Where the money is spent is certainly important to run all the programs that all of you enjoy on a regular basis. And you see on the next slide, I promise I'll go through these fast. I have quite a few, but I'll try to collapse it quickly into something cohesive. The 16-17 budget, you see ultimately where the money is spent, and it's spent where you might expect it to be spent, a lot of it on staff and people who are responsible for doing the things you all count on, as well as preschool and programs and religious school function. See the same chart ultimately that shows you where that money goes in real dollars. And I know that these charts are hard to read really quickly and absorb. I think the next chart's the one that I think is most important. Is as you look at this chart, it tells you a little bit about where we are coming in relative to the projections. Our financial projections for where we'll finish this fiscal year in June are represented in the orange line, and the blue line is the budget. The left half of the chart shows you the income side, or the revenue side of the organization. The right half, the group of lines, is the expense side. And what you see is exactly what you hope, that everything on the right side is being done to control costs. And like I said in the meeting before this, that if you saw somebody come in with a budget where expenses were exactly equal to what was budgeted, I would think that there would be a big problem. What you want to have is somebody looking over those expenses and making sure that they're managed in the proper way, as the staff has done an extraordinary job of this year. On the budget side, you'll see the second set of columns on the revenue side of the equation, and you'll see where the orange bar is substantially higher than the blue bar. That's really a function of the generosity of all of you at the annual gala, which was an extraordinary success this year. And then you'll see in the very far right the small number, the small pillars, but the blue part of that was the amount in excess revenue in excess of expenses that was planned and what was expected to go into the building fund this year, you'll see that that orange line is quite a bit higher. It's quite a bit higher because of that gala revenue on the one side and the expense control on the other side. So I will show you where we then ended up in terms of, or expect to end up at the end of next month. You'll see on this chart the projections in the left column, and compared to budget. You see that on the revenue side, certainly an increase on the revenue side, a substantial decrease on the expense side, and thanks to all of you and the hard work of staff, there's a net revenue of expenses this year of $277,000 over expenses, which is quite remarkable. You'll see that $60,000 of that will go into building reserve, and then there's $217,000 ultimately that I'll describe exactly where that'll go. But that goes to both building, additional funding into the building reserve, the education funds that provide scholarships to students, and to the operating reserves. So that's really a summary of 2016-17. I'll move quickly through the chart of 2017-18 compared to where we finished off 2016-17. And you see a similar chart: revenue on the left, expenses on the right, and you see the projections compared to budget. And this year, you'll see that the expenses are expected to go up a little bit this year, and the revenue is also expected to be significant. We are presenting a balanced budget, which is important that all of you know, but I do want to get to the next few slides here really quickly. A few things you all should know in terms of preparing the budget. The growth of the synagogue has plateaued quite a bit. There was a growth from 475 families a number of years ago up to over 800, and that stayed right around 800 over the course of the last several years, and staff has spent a lot of time and energy making sure that things are sized properly for that size of an organization. The other things, ultimately, that you should know is that we're fiscally sound. It's really a joy to say that in an organization like this. There's a lot of money in reserves. I'll talk a little bit about endowment at the end, but the organization is certainly fiscally sound. When we look at the numbers for next year's budget compared to this year's projections, you see them there. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, that looked like this: $50,000 will go to the education funds to fund our students, rather than only putting $60,000 into the building fund, which is what was anticipated in the 16-17 budget. We're going to be able to put twice as much into that fund, $120,000 into the building fund this year, and then general reserves, operating reserves, $107,000 of that excess revenue in excess of expenses will go into those reserves. If you look into the budget for 2017-18, you'll see it's a balanced budget. We're not anticipating being able to put that building fund, $60,000 of building fund reserves in, but we've doubled up what we needed in that fund from the funds that were available this year. Where does that money come from and where is it spent again? This is just a chart that gives you a sense of what is ahead of us. And as is every year, you'll see we have a lot of work to do on the development side to raise additional funds this year, although there won't be a gala with quite the fanfare of this year. There certainly will be a development event that we would expect to obtain some revenue from. And then you see the actual dollars on these two charts, I think. I make sure I'm on the right one. Yeah, so this is still back to the revenue side, and I will say at the top you do see the endowment revenue. That's a function of the growth of the endowment, and I'll show you a chart in just a moment on that. But you see where the revenue comes from, where the expenses are going as we go into 2017-18 budget. The highlights, I will say, you see them on the screen. Ultimately, there's a very small increase in membership commitments sought this year. There's also an increase in one of the levels. The sustainers circle level goes up by about $400 from $5,000 to $5,400, and everything else is fairly in line. The nice thing about this year, you see leadership gifts entering the year. We're entering the year with leadership gift commitments that are critical to the budget, well in excess of the percentage that was required last year. So as we entered last year's budget, we had about visibility into 60% of those funds. this year we're entering in the year with well in excess of 70% visibility into the funds we need to raise for that. And then finally on the expense side, there's funding for the rabbinic internship program. Rabbi has identified a couple of rabbinic interns that are going to be helping assist with some of the things going on here next year. And so the expenses associated with that are also included in the 17-18 budget. A few minor items in terms of preschool and religious school. Preschool is anticipating about a 3% increase in terms of the tuition increase. And then again, those gala funds are there to support those students as well. Everything else is fairly in line with this year. I hate to say it, it's just kind of a boring budget from that perspective. Not that it would have been exciting otherwise. I do think this is the slide I would like to call your attention to, and again, thank Mike Stein. 3 people in particular were critically important to helping this, and more importantly, how it's being managed. It was Mike Stein, Lee Silverman, and Rob Brady that are in our investment committee, and I think if we had thought about where our endowments might be 6-7 years ago, we'd be really, really excited about seeing this looking forward 6 or 7 years. They're well in excess of $5 million. And they're being overseen and managed exactly as all of you would expect to make sure that the funds are there for subsequent years' budget. So I'll finish with just a summary again of what the comparison is between the 2016-17 projections and the 2017-18 budget. And with that, I would like to make the motion to approve the 17-18 budget.
So the motion does not need a second because it comes from committee. So are there any questions or comments before we vote? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the budget as presented, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, congratulations. And honestly, none of this happens without the tremendous partnership that Steve Zola and our development vice president, Marina Stevens, and all of their teams have with our professional staff. And so we really all owe a debt of gratitude to not just our professional staff, not just our volunteers, but really to that partnership. Lots and lots of time and energy goes into making sure that we are fiscally sound, and we're really lucky to have everybody doing that, so thank you. We'd like to move on now to the bylaws presentation by Alan Levy. Again, another incredible group of volunteers working with staff to bring us to this place that we will hear about right now. Thank you, Alan.
I'm sorry this is happening so early. We're getting to the exciting part very early on. So I know you all read the bylaws in great detail, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but as Judy said, we had a really, I think when you see the names, a really spectacular committee of our most knowledgeable and experienced board members, both past and present, and both our past and present executive director. It was a great group. We met 6 times for about 12 hours total, so 2 hours per meeting, that I'm sure you're not jealous about missing. But it was a very thoughtful group. We really got into the details, line by line, of the bylaws. We didn't publish the red line version. There were extensive red lines. We cut out about 18% of the text without making too many significant changes, which just tells you the level of effort that we put into just trying to clean up the bylaws and streamlining them. I will discuss briefly a couple key changes that affect what the bylaws say that we should do. Most of the other changes were pretty minor, but the 3 changes that I personally feel are significant are, first of all, some of our discussion about how we do membership. So this may seem obvious to you, but we really made a pretty significant philosophical change several years ago
in that we no longer really consider annual commitments to be dues that every member is required to pay. Instead, we've gone to this model of commitments where people individually decide every year how much they want to give the synagogue to support our efforts. And even though we have suggested levels, no one is turned away for financial reasons, and people get to decide on their own what they can afford, rather than having someone knocking on your door and asking for tax forms and why you can't meet some predetermined level. That did happen in the past, so hopefully none of you had that happen. So this was a change that we made in reality, but the bylaws hadn't caught up yet. So this is a change that we made in the bylaws to match what we're doing. The other thing about membership that we've done is it used to really be just, to be a membership unit, it was either an individual or an individual and his or her spouse or partner. And what we found over recent years is there's been some different family situations where either an adult is living with their parent, or in that situation, or you can even have siblings living together, or a grandparent and an adult grandchild. And we decided to open up in the bylaws the ability for different family situations to be included as a family unit. So that's that's, I consider, a significant conceptual change. Probably doesn't affect us that much, but it allows more flexibility in how we define a family membership, which the committee and then the board felt was a worthwhile thing to do. The second major conceptual change is we have a quorum requirement for our meetings. We have a minimum number of members that need to be at these meetings in order to conduct business, and the current requirement is 7.5%, which works out to about 100 members. We have well over that, I'm very happy to say here today. But there was one provision that if we're hiring a senior rabbi or cantor, that then we needed a quorum of 1/3 of the voting members, which back when Rabbi Cohen was hired was about 300 people, which we did get, but it just seemed to the committee that it was unnecessary to have a different quorum requirement depending on the reason for the meeting. So we've decided to get rid of that, and we'll just have one quorum requirement for any congregational meeting, regardless of the purpose. We also changed, we also streamlined and standardized the requirements for calling congregational meetings. So now that any meeting that's called would have the same requirements, which we felt was beneficial. And then the third major change is our process for hiring clergy. There was a lot of odd language in there about different situations for hiring or termination or voting to whether to keep a rabbi or not, or assistant rabbis. And so what we decided to do is try to streamline that so the process is very similar regardless of what stage in the hiring process we're in. And also what we found is previously, if we were going to hire an assistant rabbi or an associate rabbi, we actually had to bring it to the congregation for a vote, which seemed unnecessary. I think we're now more comfortable as a congregation with our process of the clergy coming up with a candidate and recommending that to the board, that person to the board of trustees for a particular position, and then the board of trustees approving it. And then, we come to the congregation and say, this is what we've decided, and also, as Steve mentioned, this all has to be in the budget, which is approved by the congregation. But we felt that it should be sufficient for the clergy to nominate a candidate and then have the board ratify that decision, and not need to call a special meeting or try to fit it in so that it's at this meeting every year if we need to. If the clergy determine that we want to bring in additional clergy. So those are the three, what I would consider major changes. At this time, I'd like to make a motion on behalf of the Board of Trustees that the bylaws revision as distributed to the congregation be approved by the congregation. And it's from committee effectively, so it doesn't require a second.
Thank you. Are there any questions about the bylaws? Yes.
Have you maintained the 7.5%
Yeah.
quorum requirement?
Yeah, so we kept the same quorum requirement. It's still at 7.5%. That was, before tonight, that seemed like a maximally achievable number. I think we're doing a little bit better tonight, so we may, in the future, evaluate that. One other thing I just want to say is, we did, this committee, because we only met 6 times, we kind of took care of the easy stuff. There are a number of issues that we still want to discuss over coming years that are more substantive and require a larger discussion, such as, continuing to expand the role of the non-Jewish members of our community, and some things like quorum requirements and what's the purpose of this annual meeting. So there are some issues that we will still be discussing, but this bylaws revision has been kind of many years in the making, and I'm really happy that we've done all this cleanup work, but they're not, the work's not done yet, but I think we're making a good start.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor of approving the bylaws as presented? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, congratulations. I will say, having served on this bylaws committee, that this was an incredibly thoughtful group of people, and I, again, just want to express gratitude to all of those who served. As you can see by all of these presentations, hours and hours and hours of work goes into what gets distilled into just a few minutes here tonight, and there's a lot of people involved, so we're very thankful. And thank you, Alan, for leading a great process of revision of those bylaws. Next, I'd like to call Linton Bursey, who is the chair of our nominating committee this year, so that we can vote on our slate of officers and trustees. Thank you. I know.
Do I do it or you do it? Okay. Anyhow, I'm Winton Bursey, chair of the nominating committee. My purpose today is to put forth a motion to approve the 2017-18 slate of officers and trustees as presented by the group. For your information, a little background. We start on how the process works. We start meeting last year. We met with members of clergy, executive committee, and others in CBB leadership roles, and try to ascertain the goals that are set forth and making sure that the board can essentially be melded to accommodate those goals as we go forward. This year we had the added challenge, I would say, that we had to find a new president that could lead this group. More on that later. We surveyed and met existing board members, and again, the clergy had input. Our goal is to complete a careful analysis of the ongoing people. We've surveyed all the board members, the existing ones, and to make sure that we have some, new entry and people that are going to go to leadership positions in the future. I think we try to reach an appropriate balance and representation among the entire CBB community, and I believe we will have achieved that. I'd like to thank my fellow members. I won't have them stand up because other than the board members, most of them couldn't make this meeting. But the ongoing also support, thank you very much to the Rabbi, Elizabeth, and the incoming and outgoing presidents for their considerable assistance. But the names of the group, it was Harvey Wolf, Marcy Wimbers, Cerise Silverberg, David Raphael, Josh Narva, Dan Haybecker, Judy, of course, who can't find a committee she doesn't want to be on, and myself. Next. Yes, I'd like to point out some updates, some changes on, and to point out the special recognitions to some people that are no longer or stepping down from the board. I wish thank you. They have contributed their leadership and are now completing their service, and at least for now, because as you know, we try to get some of them back. But you've been very generous with your time and effort. Thank you so much. To Hallie Volio, past president, Maddie Doucette, who's graduating as the sporting president, Bob Ingram, an at-large trustee, Melody Lee, treasurer, and of course Steve Zola, financial VP. We thank you for your service and appreciate your dedication. And know this. I'm pleased to present the slate to the congregation for consideration. I do want to give a special welcome to our newest members. Stephen Americano as president. Steve is eminently capable of assuming this position. He's been involved in both Santa Barbara Jewish community and Santa Barbara community for many years. Just a little bit of background for those who don't know Steve. He's managing partner of Brownstein, Hyatt, Farber, and Schreck, formerly known as Hatcher Parent. He's been on the board of directors of the Santa Barbara Region Chamber of Commerce, Santa Barbara Business Leaders Council, Coastal Housing Commission, Miller McEwen Center for Research, Jewish Federation, some other group, where he was actually president for 4 years, from 88 to 92, and the Santa Barbara Hillel. Maybe the rabbi can elucidate us on a story there later on, from 2002 to 2004. Additionally, Steve led the legacy fundraising campaign here at CBB. So he's been very involved in life both in Santa Barbara and at large. So that's Mr. Americano, we welcome him. Ellen Chase as treasurer. Ellen is an accountant at Nassib, Hicks, Harris & Co. And prior to selecting accounting as a profession, she actually earned a master's in engineering administration at Virginia Polytech and a BS in business from Ohio State, and worked in manufacturing, solid state rocket fuels, things like this, in the high-tech and defense companies. So I think she can handle our books. If not, we blow up. Anyhow, Max Gaines is the sporty president, continuing the family tradition of leadership. Next slide, please. So I want to point out a few wonderful changes. Rich Parisi has again accepted the position, I should say, the financial VP, and come back for another term, leaving his at-large. Thank you. Laura Haybecker has stepped up and accepted the membership VP as Rachel Wilson moves to the at-large position. And this year we have another swap, again swapping rabbi, again swapping. And it involves Diane Zipperstein again, who has accepted the development VP, and Marina Stevens is moving to a position of program VP. It's better aligning their passions with their positions, I believe. And of course, but not least, it's a sad thing, but the progress is happening. Judy Coper is becoming the past president. So, with the exception of the noted changes, all of the other officers and trustees will continue to serve in their previous leadership roles. May I present the 2017-18 slate of officers and trustees? I will ask that you hold your applause, please, in the interest of time, but that as I call your name, if you can please come up. On the executive committee, President Steve Americano, Executive VP Josh Narva, Administrative VP Dan Rothschild. I'll do this. No? Okay. Program VP Marina Stevens, Education VP Mimi Dent, Financial VP Rich Parisi, Development VP Diane Zipperstein, Membership VP Laura Haybecker, Past President Judy Coper. Next slide. Building Trustee Michael Baker, Corresponding Secretary Lynn Glassman, Treasurer Ellen Chase, Parliamentarian Alan Levy, Preschool Sarah Porat, Recording Secretary Joan Piltz, Religious Practices Susan Rakoff, Religious School Nancy Collins, Social Action Dan Mizell. Next slide. Fundraising events Becky Feinberg, At Large Valerie Edelheit, At Large Rachel Wilson, and At Large Harvey Wolf. Sisterhood trustee is nominated by the Sisterhood, Rachel Geiger, and Sporty President Max Gaines. Board positions appointed by the President, Music, Maya Lawrence Palmer, and as Guardian of the Convent, Shomrei Hatfrid. You can correct me on the pronunciation later, Rabbi. Daniel Hockman, thank you. So also honorary board members, Marilyn Bernstein, Aaron Eppenberg, and Ruleen Hockman. Thank you very much, and thank you. concludes our slate, and before we have the motion to approve, and on behalf of the entire community, I want to thank all of the officers and trustees who generously give their service, allow our congregation to not only go about our business and mission, but to grow and thrive. Also, on another note, a personal self-interest note, if you are interested in participating in leadership here at CBB, or know somebody that should be, please make sure to let your desires known to any member of the board, Elizabeth Bowman. Thank you very much. So I present the motion to approve the slate of officers and trustees as presented by the nominating committee. And after we get through with pictures, our president will take the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. So a motion has been made to accept the slate as presented. It does not need a second because it comes from committee. So are there any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations. Thank you, Winton. Honestly, having worked with all of these people for the past number of years, I can tell you that this is the greatest board ever, without a doubt. So it is now time to move into my remarks. I don't know what happened here. I want to be sure you can hear them. Did somebody, Winton, I think you took my papers. I would try to do it without them, but I would probably go on too long and start, thank you.
That's what they asked you.
Thank you. Okay, so at my last board meeting as president, the entire group sang to the tune of Neil Diamond's Sweet Caroline, a song called Sweet Judy Kay, with customized lyrics crafted by the Edelheids and Cantor, touching on highlights of my journey as president. It was thoughtful, fun, funny, and so memorable. I thought about singing you all a song with my annual report tonight, but I will spare you the tune and share with you some of our important work over the past year. We started out with a board retreat where we explored our personal leadership styles, our individual roles, and our collective job as a board. This was a wonderful opportunity to work together to form specific plans and goals and to set priorities. I think we have accomplished a great deal this year and believe that we all feel very good about where CBB is today. In addition to the regular business matters and the incredible work that culminated in the presentations we just had tonight, the board this past year updated and enacted significant policies around our investment and endowment portfolios to ensure that we follow best practices and effectively manage our financial resources. We also spent a great deal of time crafting a policy to provide a consistent approach to social action and advocacy, as increasingly we are asked to participate in Jewish and public policy issues. We are taking initial steps to assess and plan for upgrading our education building and adjacent outdoor space, for addressing administrative office needs, and for improving the overall flow, safety, and accessibility throughout our entire campus. Stay tuned, as this will be a significant and ongoing project, and I want to give a huge thank you to Marty Levy for expertly guiding us through this process. Rabbi Cohen and Cantor Childs have successfully transitioned to a two-clergy model and continue to provide rich and meaningful Shabbat and holiday observances, spirituality, care, and guidance. We are so thankful to you, Rabbi Cohen, and to you, Cantor Childs, wherever you may be, Cantor, for the creativity, teamwork, and most of all, the dedication that all of this takes. We have continued to develop sophistication in our communications, and Voices is a literary treasure. The breadth of opportunities, programs, and acts of caring for each other jump out at us every time we open up our weekly email. Last year, we reported about the formation of MOB, or Men of B'nai B'rith, who step up each and every time asked, including tonight with the preparation of our delicious food. Thank you. And a big shout out to Ron Lieberman, who is just celebrating his 1-year anniversary as our Director of Operations, for overseeing tonight and for so many other things that he does to make this place This year, Bob, the Baby Boomers of B'nai B'rith, was created and has become an instant success with many volunteers and tremendous leadership from Natalie Simons and Debbie Hartzman. Debbie, I saw you. Thank you. Our sisterhood, who once again stepped up to fund improvements in our kitchen, is an enduring and powerful group. And on that note, I do want to take a moment to recognize Jessica Glick, who for 15 plus years has masterfully run our beautiful temple gift shop and is now passing the reins. Jessica, sisterhood, and all of us, thank you so much for all that you have done, and want to give you this beautiful gift. Here's Jessica. I've been told by Sisterhood that I also have to announce that if anybody wants to help run the gift shop from here forward, to please let someone from Sisterhood know and to let Mariella know. Seriously, Jessica, thank you for all of your years of service, and much of it behind the scenes. In the education realm, we are flourishing with happy toddlers, kids, and teens developing strong Jewish identities, and adult scholars being enriched in the inaugural year of the Milton School. We are so proud of our entire education team, and many of whom at a recent National Conference for Excellence in Jewish Education were asked to present CBB's Jewish Learning Program as an exemplary model for all synagogues. And of course, the major highlight of this past year, the Dreamers Ball, celebrating our 90th anniversary and honoring our magnificent cantor, wove together our past, present, and future, and simply put, was spectacular. In the midst of this list of accomplishments and pride, we have encountered hurdles. The loss of precious and integral CBB family members has had a profound impact here, as well as in our greater Santa Barbara community. And we have been challenged in new ways, perhaps the most significant of which has been how to strike a balance between keeping CBB a place of inclusion and diversity, while at the same time making space for everyone to feel free and safe to express themselves and to organize around issues of importance in their Jewish lives. What this looks like for each individual may be very different, and yet we must come together in this, our House of Living Judaism, for respectful debate and the discovery of common ground. Do we hit the mark every time? Probably not. But I can tell you with 100% confidence that our CBB leadership acts thoughtfully, authentically, and responsibly, looking out always for our communal best interests. In my first speech to the congregation as president, I recounted a teaching that Rabbi Cohen had just done with us about our Hebrew names. Mine is Yehudit, the root of which means gratitude. So I will end as I began my term, fitting to my name, expressing my deepest gratitude. To our inspirational presidents and leaders who served before me, to our generous donors and benefactors, to our hardworking and superhuman CBB staff and hundreds of volunteers, as well as to their families that don't have them at home on many nights and weekends, to our dedicated and passionate Board of Trustees, with a special acknowledgement to our sage Executive Vice President Josh Narva, who we are lucky to have continuing in that role, to our congregational gem Elizabeth Gaines, who creates meaning and magic at CBB every day, to our cherished Rabbi Cohen and Cantor Childs, who make it so easy to serve as president, and most importantly, to my incredible and patient husband, Alex, who along with our kids have always been my best, most supportive and loving cheerleaders. To all of you, thank you. And lastly, to all of you and to our whole congregation, thank you for entrusting me with the leadership of this very special place and for making what has truly been for me the sweet GDK presidency. Thank you. I I knew when I said the name Alex that it was going to get to me. That's really where my heart is all the time. It is now my pleasure to turn it over to our new president, Stephen Americano, who is wonderful, smart, and experienced, and who, without a doubt, will lead us brilliantly in this next chapter of our CBB life.
Is that all right? Yeah. Okay. Well done. I won't touch it. Judy, thank you. Thank you for all that you did tonight, all that you've done leading up to tonight, all that you've done for this congregation. You are really extraordinary, and we appreciate it. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm honored to have been asked to serve as president of this congregation, even more so because of our long and close attachment to this wonderful temple. Phyllis and I have been members here since 1982, 35 years. Our now adult children, David and Kate, celebrated their B'nai Mitzvah in this room. And now Kate sings in the adult choir, as well as in the Santa Barbara Opera. Our family has participated in innumerable temple celebrations and events, including a number of Purim spiels, written by Phyllis and Aaron Ettenberg, which now live on in legend. Over the past few weeks, I've been asked by a number of people why I decided to take on this responsibility at this point in my career, as I'm beginning to wind down my law practice and have two wonderful grandchildren with whom I would gladly spend more time. The question led to some reflection on my part about my years of involvement in the Jewish community, my need for glasses, and my motivation for doing that work. That involvement began 30 years ago, and some of you may remember this story. In 1987, the Jewish community experienced one of its infrequent episodes of overt anti-Semitism. Evelyn Schlensky's teenage daughter appeared before the school board to point out how Jewish students felt excluded by the school's heavy emphasis on Christmas. The next day, she woke up and discovered that her car had been painted with swastikas. The event itself was upsetting. Even more disturbing was the resounding silence of Santa Barbara's leaders, both political and religious. As the grandson of Holocaust survivors, this hit me hard. And so, as you've heard, I joined the Santa Barbara Jewish Federation Community Relations Council and then the Federation Board in an effort to ensure that Santa Barbara's response to this kind of an assault in the future reflected the values of diversity and acceptance that our Jewish traditions hold dear. My motivation for stepping forward today are very different. They're rooted not in the distress and fear from 1987, but in an abiding optimism about the future of this congregation. As you've heard tonight, this temple is strong and secure. Under the leadership of Judy Coper and the Board of Trustees, the temple is operating on a financially stable foundation and provides a myriad of wonderful services to the community, including a preschool that, dare I say, is second to none. Our rabbi, that was an amen from the back. And as all of you know, our Rabbi and Cantor have created an open and welcoming spiritual environment that's a true home to so many people, including Jews by choice and interfaith families. Steve and Mark are a major reason the congregation is so attached to CBB. So my reasons today are simple and are rooted in a simple question related to the fact that I will be celebrating my 70th birthday this year. The question is this: what kind of a world would I like to leave behind? There's not much that I can do about what's happening in Beijing or London or even Washington. But there's certainly things that I can do about the world we have right here in Santa Barbara. So as I consider the legacy I wish to leave, I'd like to be part of the effort to ensure that this Jewish community is as strong and secure 50 years from now as it is today. Equally important, I want this congregation and the larger Santa Barbara community to be a place where people care about finding common ground and respectfully understanding differences. I strongly believe that we need to reverse this country's slide into rancor and divisiveness, and that starts right here at home. Having met with and sat through meetings of the board, I can tell you that the leadership that you've selected tonight is committed to those goals, and I'm very proud to lend my hand to that effort. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Wonderful to be with all of you, and so many of us tonight. This is way more than we have ever, at least in my memory, that we've ever had at an annual meeting. And it's exciting. And it's wonderful to look out and see so many people from so many different parts of the temple world all here together. So, how do you sum up 365 days of working, learning, eating, celebrating, grieving, growing, praying, singing, building, comforting, confronting, collaborating, meditating, debating, in just a few minutes?
Go for it.
It's not possible. It's not possible. In my allotted time this evening, I would like to thank a few key people, share a few thoughts about our core Jewish values here at CBB, and then open the floor, briefly, for a short opportunity to hear from you. So start thinking now, while I'm talking. We would love, as soon as I'm done, we would love to hear a few words from as many of you as possible. So a few words from as many of you as possible about how you see CBB at this moment in our history. What you want more of, what you'd like to see different, and what you love just the way it is. But first, thank you. Thank you to Judy Coburn, who has been an extraordinary president for our congregation. Judy is a brilliantly clear thinker and a deeply loving and thoughtful leader. Judy has been, for me, a source of endless comfort, wisdom, guidance, and friendship. And thank you to the entire Board of Trustees, who volunteer countless hours of their time and who undertake the awesome responsibility of representing the 800 households that make up our congregation. Thank you to Steve Americano, who has been my friend for over 30 years and a towering presence here in Santa Barbara. We are blessed, and I feel deeply grateful to Steve for his deciding to accept the mantle of president of the congregation. We are, as you've already gotten a glimpse of tonight, we are in immensely intelligent and capable hands. Some of them have already been thanked, but I would like to offer my own thanks to all of the professional staff of CBB. Executive Director Elizabeth Gaines,
Cantor Mark Childs, Director of Jewish Learning Jen Lewis, Director of Operations Ron Gleiberman, Director of Early Childhood Education Julie Ernstein, Program Director Paul Zakshowski, Bookkeeper Terry Grimes, Office Manager Audrey Okaneko, Director of Youth Engagement Ben Mazer, Maintenance Supervisor Abad Vallejo, I don't know if Abad is in the room, she's always around, somewhere. Property Manager and Caretaker Stephen Turner. This is literally a dream team. Many of you probably don't know many of those people, but every single member of this staff is a star. Hardworking, smart, kind, and ready at any moment to go above and beyond the call of duty. Now, 2 years ago, in preparing some publicity materials for our education program, I made a list of 7 values at the core of Judaism's wisdom for healthy, happy, ethical living. And I think that these values are at the heart not only of our learning programs, but of our entire life as a congregation. Here they are. It's a list of 7. I could have done a list of 10 or 20, but 7's a good Jewish number. Value number 1, freedom of thought. At CVB, all questions are welcome and encouraged. In fact, the harder the question, the better. And being good Jews, we always prefer a good question to a good answer, because a good answer tends to end the conversation, while a good question gets us talking, and hopefully arguing. Value 2, clear communication. I do not know if this has always been true, but it seems like we are living now in times in which the basic human capacity to share our inner lives has broken down. Perhaps it is because so many are learning to overshare on social media rather than find true emotional intimacy face to face. But now more than ever, the world needs Judaism's commitment to speaking the truth and to careful listening, especially to people who see things differently than we do. Value number 3, and I think we're particularly good on this one here, just the right balance of humor and reverence. These 2 values are not incompatible. Reverence without humor is dull. And humor without reverence is anarchic. And ultimately produces a terrifying universe of meaninglessness. Here at CBB, we want both reverence and humor. Even on Yom Kippur. Both reverence and humor. Value number 4, the power of apology and forgiveness. We are human, all of us, and imperfect. Inevitably, we will disappoint each other and even hurt each other. But the simple words, please, can you forgive me? Not simple at all, really. But those words, please, can you forgive me, allow us to live together in family and in friendship. Value number 5, deep respect for all religions and peoples. We long for a world at peace, but we do not want the whole world to be Jewish. We have always been a small religion, and that has suited us. Fine. We have much to learn from our Muslim neighbors, our Christian neighbors, and by the way, we Reformed Jews have much to learn from Orthodox Judaism. And they have much to learn from us. Value number 6, passion and commitment without fanaticism. You may be familiar with the famous line by the great Irish poet William Butler Yeats, describing the world as he saw it in the early 20th century, from his poem, The Second Coming. This line has just haunted me for my whole life since I first read it in high school. The worst are full of passionate intensity, and the best lack all conviction. We are building here at CBB a community in which it is possible to find women, men, and children who are passionately committed, but also kind and tolerant and open-minded. And last but not least, value number 7. In the midst of busy lives, the wisdom of Shabbat. A day to stop racing. A day for resting, for reading, for thinking and singing, for eating, napping, walking, and praying. A day for friendship, for love, for healing. Never has the world been more in need of the wisdom of Shabbat. And in living Shabbat as a congregation, we will discover the power of this community to repair and heal the world. So this evening, as I come to the end of my 13th year as your rabbi, these are 7 core values that I hope we are living here at CBB. Freedom of thought, clear communication, just the right balance of humor and reverence, the power of apology and forgiveness, deep respect for all religions and peoples, passion and commitment without fanaticism, and in the midst of busy lives, the wisdom of Shabbat, a day to stop racing. To the extent that we are living these values as individuals and as a community, I believe that Congregation B'nai B'rith is already and will be more and more in the coming years a powerful force for Tikkun Olam, the perfection of our world. So now, in the spirit of good communication, of speaking the truth, and of listening carefully, please share with all of us one thought, one question, one suggestion, or one word of blissful contentment. So, and Elizabeth, or Jaron, will you just make notes about the things that are offered? Yes, Elizabeth. And again, please, just very, very brief so we can hear from as many people as possible.
There was a mention of rabbinical interns, and what are your thoughts on that? I'm curious.
We'll be having 2 rabbinic students from HSC coming up on a regular basis this year, and you'll get to meet them. They're wonderful, and you'll be meeting them. They start September 1st. Actually, you'll meet one of them in July. Robert.
Ann and I are relatively new members of the congregation, having been here only 4 years. And I've run the gamut from Orthodox to conservative to Reform. And this is a very, very unique group. We've got a canon who's second to none. We have a rabbi who really, really cares about people. And all of you have been so welcoming to us. It is really a pleasure to be here. And I can't say enough about the feelings that we have been blessed with by being members of this congregation. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you. Rhoda Coleman. Hello?
You remember the question I asked the high school students? How do you feel about Israel? I got virtually no response. I felt disappointed, but then I also felt that I got quite an answer from their silence. And I'm disappointed in that they felt no affiliation, affection, feeling, something. Maybe they should be taught more about Israel or in the school. All right.
Thank you. I was disappointed also, although it was a scary situation, you know, to be up there. You're 17 years old in front of 200 people. A number of them came up to me afterwards and said, I have a lot to say about Israel. I just didn't feel like saying it in front of everybody. So, your question does give me an opportunity to say that this coming year is the 70th anniversary of Israel's independence, and we are planning to make that one of the program highlights of this coming year in many different ways. Howard.
Thank you, Rabbi. I want to thank you, and I want to thank the board and CBB for being so supportive of mental wellness in the temple. Being the clinical counselor at Jewish Family Service is very important to me, and also being on the mental wellness committee. We have a great committee, and you have been very supportive of that in helping the congregation and getting information out. I also want to personally thank you for your support of the LGBTQ community at the temple for diversity and taking care of those members like myself.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you for your leadership in both of those areas, mental wellness and the LGBTQ. Mike, way back in the back.
So, as a parent of 2 boys in the preschool, I was curious if there's been any discussion towards expanding the preschool program beyond just preschool.
Do you mean in terms of creating a full-time school for kindergarten and older? We don't have any plans for that at this time. The last effort along those lines in this town was about 10 years ago. And if there is a groundswell of interest, that's something that we would talk about. Yeah. Devorah.
Yes. This temple became like a family to me. It really feels good to be here. My friendship, my support, my culture, my education, we all get it from everybody, especially from you, Rabbi, and the Kenters. You know I love you.
We all love you, Devorah. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you talked about tolerance to religion, but you didn't mention atheists.
I have a secret. Most of the members of this congregation are some form of atheist. In my experience, so we have to be very tolerant. Yes, Doug.
As someone who doesn't have the capacity to give financially, I appreciate the opportunities, vast opportunities to contribute time. And the volunteer committees and all that have been so welcoming and very gratifying way to participate in new temple life. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Doug. And thank you personally and for everybody else who, like Doug, gives so many hours of volunteer time. Is it David? Past President Landecker.
In that capacity, I just want to say how wonderful it is to come to an annual meeting and have you open the floor and to hear people express appreciation and love and commitment instead of rights. It's hard to believe listening to all of this and seeing all of this where we were 15, 20 years ago. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that perspective. And I want to thank all of the past presidents who are here tonight, especially those who served during hard times for this congregation. Ravi.
I want to thank you, Rabbi, and the congregation for supporting learning opportunities, both for adults as well as for children. I feel very enriched by the offerings here, and of course always look forward to more, but just a really wonderful enrichment here that you have for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. Is Judy Karen here, by the way? Yes, I want to specifically thank and recognize the director of our new Melton School of Adult Jewish Learning, Judy Karen. Just along those lines that Ravi mentioned of adult education, The Melton School is our big new program, and we're currently recruiting new students for next fall. So if you're interested in lifting the level of your Jewish education, the Melton School is really something to consider, and I know that Judy's got a table out in the lobby and would love to give you some information. I saw Rita.
I'd like to thank you and Cantor for your support of the Jewish community at Maravilla Senior Community. You've been wonderful friends and very helpful to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. It's wonderful. There's a Shabbat dinner at Maravilla once a month, and it's growing and growing, and Rita has been leading the drive to get Maravilla to expand the seating. And so thank you for your leadership there, Rita.
And they are receptive.
Wonderful. Ellen.
As a new member of B'nai B'rith with a distinct Brooklyn accent, feel very proud to be a new member, and with a strong feeling of social and economic justice for everybody. I think that we are a very strong organization, and I would just add a personal feeling when I see Jewish names in the current Washington administration.
Okay. Thank you. I think I'm just looking at the clock, and this is a good place to, and obviously, I hope you all know that we want to hear from you. You know, if not in a big public forum like this, privately, please let us know, you know, how you're experiencing the congregation and what you would like to see, what you love and what you don't so much love. So thanks to everybody who spoke up tonight. It was very just heartwarming to hear all of the comments. And so now, back to Judy.
Thank you. So I know that the evening, you know, is getting late, but the next two things are not to be missed. So please stick with us. Thank you, Rabbi Cohen, for your always inspirational remarks and your guidance. We feel lucky and blessed every single day that you chose 13 years ago to be here with us at CBB. I'd like to now announce and celebrate a most momentous occasion, and that is the unanimous vote of our Board of Trustees to renew Rabbi Cohen's contract for a 10-year term. In our congregational history that we know of, where we have a retirement contract that provides for our beloved rabbi to stay on as a rabbi emeritus. Our contract committee was chaired by Finance VP Steve Zola and included Executive VP Josh Narva, Executive Director Elizabeth Gaines, and myself. Steve Zola, thank you for taking the lead and for all of your research, and to all of you on the committee for the review and attention you gave to this important responsibility. I want to acknowledge Marion and thank you for your own participation in this community. I want to thank you for your own inspired participation in this community, as well as your generosity with your husband, our rabbi. And to Rabbi Cohen, it was such a wonderful experience working on and collaborating on this together. You are a thoughtful and generous person and have given us the gift of tremendous security, as well as the time and flexibility for succession planning. We are, each and every one of us, grateful for your commitment to our ongoing sustainability, for the life you breathe into this congregation, and for the vibrancy that we feel when we are with you. So, this is the cue, everyone. We got the cue? Come on up here, Rabbi Cohen.
Oh my God. I thought we agreed never again.
I was just going to say, so in the great Jewish tradition, of celebratory toasts with slivovitz. We raise a schnort and say Todah and L'chaim to the next 10 years and beyond, and I'm going to turn it over to Cantor Childs.
He's good at that.
Is it?
Well, rumor has it, Rabbi, that
It's all not true.
that slivovitz is your drink of choice. And so tonight, as we celebrate your terminal contract, the thought of 10 years more together makes me want to drink to you. And so here it is. Everybody, there's slivovitz coming around, or grape juice for those of you who don't want to toast with slivovitz. But this is indeed an occasion where we want to raise a glass together with the Shehecheyanu. So it's coming around, but I don't think, for time reasons, we won't wait till everybody gets one. But when you get it, raise your glass to Rabbi Steve Cohen and a long and beautiful relationship with CBB. Remember that, Steve? Remember that taste? The hair of the dog, as they say.
Okay. Thank you. I can't tell you, that was one of, I couldn't say it beforehand because I wanted to, listen up. Is everybody with me? I didn't want to ruin the surprise, but obviously that has also been a tremendous highlight of this past year, is having our Rabbi Cohen commit to another 10 years with us and then beyond. And so that's wonderful. Our last bit of this meeting is the touching and living history that Cantor Childs makes every year, and that is our year in review. Are we ready for that? This is always a not-to-be-missed event as well, and thank you, Cantor, for creating this for us every year. Lights off? Yeah, lights off. Lights off.
I just want to say before I start, one of the hardest things about creating this video is trying to include everybody's face at one point in the video. So all I have to say is, if you are not represented in this video personally, just ask yourself, what did I do to deserve that kind of treatment? The people in this video represent the entire congregation. You are the entire congregation. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen, year 2016, 2017, year in review.
מעשיך אדוני, מעשיך אדוני, מעשיך אדוני, מעשיך אדוני, מעשיך אדוני, מעשיך אדוני, מעשיך אדוני,
כולם בחוכמה עשית, כולם בחוכמה עשית, כולם בחוכמה עשית,
מעשיך אדוני, מעשיך אדוני, מעשיך אדוני, מעשיך אדוני, מלא הארץ, מלא הארץ, מלא הארץ, מעשיך אדוני, מעשיך אדוני, מעשיך אדוני, מעשיך אדוני, the prairies, the flowers, the hills and the trees, the stars and the sunsets, the birds and the bees, the mountains, the rivers, the valleys, the streams, the oceans, the deserts, and all living things, all living things, all living things. Marabu, Marabu, Ma'asecha Adonai, Ma'asecha Adonai, Ma'asecha Adonai, Ma'asecha Adonai, Marabu, Ma'asecha Marabu, Ma'asecha Marabu, Ma'asecha Marabu, Ma'asecha Adonai. אתה לבד טועה בערפל, תיתן לי יד ביחד להתגבר, אור אחד ניצוץ בערפל. ואהבת לרעך כמוך, כלל הכי חשוב בתורה. ואהבת לרעך כמוך, גם בטוב וגם ברע. ועם הזמן הולך ומתגלה, והימים רבים בלי מענה. המנהרה נראית ללא קצה, דווקא אז הוא מתגלה. ועם החול כיסה את הפנים, במרום קבוע כוכבים, עם עולם שבור לרסיסים.
קידוחי בעת אישה ואירה ואם רוחי יביאתי אדוני לי ולא
I'll stay home again.
Thank you again, Cantor Childs. Where did you go now? Over here. Thank you. Thank you. That was awesome, as always. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn my last meeting as president. And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Thank you so much for coming. It was wonderful.